2011 Ford Ranger with the 4-liter V6, and today we're going to be replacing the engine coolant thermostat housing. Over at our computer you can see that our vehicle requires Ford Premium Gold engine coolant, 13.2 quarts if you have an automatic transmission, and 13.7 quarts if you have a manual transmission. Let's get to it. Alright, first step, we're going to go ahead and grab our 7mm. We're going to go ahead and remove this top cover. Our thermostat and housing are located right underneath the front of the intake at the top of the engine. Oh, missed one back here. Grab ourselves a flathead screwdriver and remove the intake tubing. You look right down here, you're going to see that it has a little pull tab on it. You just push this down, and if it's not broken, this usually works out pretty easily, but this one is apparently broken. Thank you. You can use a flathead for these or an 8mm. I just used the flathead because it was the first thing I saw. Go ahead and remove this harness tab. Thing is already loose. It's just very old and does not want to come off. There we go. And now that we have access, we can go ahead and remove the throttle body. Throttle body appears to be held on with 8mm bolts. Yep, 8mm bolts. And there are 4 of them, 1 in each corner. And what I want to do is, I don't really feel like dealing with all the cables and stuff, so I'm gonna see if I can't just disconnect this and then kind of roll it over the top. We'll see if that works or not. Get myself a swivel extension. As you can see, these have little grooves cut into the edgings, so that way your socket can actually wiggle about 5 degrees. And that should give us all we need to get down to this tight spot. Remove this harness clip right here. And just rotate that over the top. Good. I'm glad that worked out. And when you're at this point, if you're just replacing your thermostat and not the housing, you can go ahead and disconnect these 3 8mm bolts. The last one's right back there. Slide the top off, pull your thermostat out, put your new thermostat in. Make sure your new thermostat has a gasket with it. Do not install these without your gasket. And put those 8mm bolts back in, put everything else back together, blah, blah, blah. You get it. For everybody else that's going to be replacing the entire thermostat housing like we are, or I am I guess, we're going to go ahead and start removing the intake manifold. To remove your intake manifold, there's going to be, I think, 8 bolts. They are the T30. So get yourself a nice long extension. And this will be a little bit difficult to see, but you know, let me get my light bar. Got my light bar hooked up, and if you look down in here, you can see that there are tiny holes. This was supposed to be, I think it's right about right here. It's hard for me to see because I can't climb up on top of the engine right here. But you can see that there is a, oh, there it is. There's holes. And if we move back here, you can see that there's another one. And then at the very back, there are some hidden ones behind the intake manifold. You might need to remove this harness right here to get to those. If you do, it's just 10 millimeter right there, and you should be able to wiggle it out of the way so you can get to those bolts. I believe that there's only 4 per side, so there should only be 8. So I want to go ahead and get to work on that, I guess. Starting with the ones right in front, you can access these by putting your tool right down next to the throttle cables. Change my mind, I think I am going to have to climb up on top of the engine. Just make this easier in the long run. Now for me, I'm just going to break these bolts loose. I don't really want to remove them, and hopefully that makes it easier to line these back up in the future when I'm putting everything back together. And then you just find those holes, and you're probably going to have to just play around with it until you get it in there, because there's not really a good line of sight anywhere. I was going to use a swivel joint because my tool is hitting the hood here, but I can't find my swivel joint, so I'm just going to have to grab a manual 1/4 inch ratchet and do the last 2 in the back by hand. The ones in the back are easy if you just feel around for them. stays in the socket or in the hole so you don't lose it. Why? For whatever reason, the nut holding this harness is an 11 millimeter. I don't know if that is the way it is for everybody's, but maybe mine was replaced at one point in time. Anyway. Pull the harness over the intake manifold, and you can just kind of feel around with your hand. This one's kind of deep down in there, actually. And with those 8 bolts removed, we should be able to gently lift up on our intake. It looks like we're going to need to remove the evap solenoid tubing. That's this tubing coming up from your exhaust system, held on right here by 2 10 millimeter bolts. And then we should be able to just disconnect that. All right, let's go ahead and remove the EGR valve. 10 millimeter bolts. I don't know why that was a battle, but it was. Go. Make sure you do not lose your gasket inside of here. And then right back here where we have our coil pack, there are 2 8 millimeter bolts that go to the support for the coil pack, and then they bolt down here behind the engine. I'm going to go ahead and remove these 2 8 millimeter bolts and see if I can't just pull this out of the way a little bit and squeeze the manifold by that. Hopefully there's not too much else in the way, because it's getting cumbersome. You don't even need this bracket here. It's not like it's going to ground out through a plastic intake manifold. There we go. And we're just going to pry up gently. Try to get as much space under here as we can. I'm just gonna push a flathead screwdriver in here. To act as a support to hold that out of the way. And with that, we now have access to our thermostat housing. Go ahead and try to move this old ass wire out of the way. But back here, we can go ahead and start removing our 2 hoses here and our 3rd lower hose right down here. Might be a little bit more difficult to see, but you'll see it on yours. And then we have 3 bolts right here, pretty much circling this smaller hose in the back. It looks like a 7mm. Might be an 8. Yeah, they're 8mm bolts. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and start removing these hoses now, starting with this big one in the front. And what I actually want to do is try to get this alternator power line out of the way. Let's see if I can't get underneath of this thing. Better about that. And as you're loosening these hoses, and as you loosen your hoses, you are going to lose a little bit of coolant. That's okay. I'm actually going to be doing a flush on this vehicle. As you can see, this has green coolant in it, which is not supposed to have. It's supposed to have the Ford Gold. So if you do have green coolant in there or anything else, this is a good time to do your flush. If not, don't worry about doing the flush and just top this back off so you save yourself a little bit of money on coolant. Go ahead and grab my catch can, throw it underneath. Usually right underneath the engine is where it's mostly going to be leaking. So with that, when we pull this first hose, I'm going to try to yank it up. Try to keep as much coolant inside the hose as possible. Most of it will probably still drain out when we remove the other hoses, but like I said, if you don't want to have to replace your entire system, this is a easy and sensible way to save a couple bucks on coolant. Now back here, go ahead and disconnect our sensor. It's just a very simple pull tab sensor, nice and easy. I think I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove this lower hose next. Some angled needle noses are very helpful in situations like this. Still not perfect, but still pretty useful. Get ourselves some regular needle noses. We're gonna wiggle this hose, make sure it's broken loose all around. Good. And we can leave that like that for now. We're gonna go ahead and remove this hose next. I'm back here with our angled needle noses. We can get a good bite on this hose clamp and lift it up. Beautiful. I'm just going to grab this. See if I can't twist a little bit. Alright, it came a little bit loose. I'm going to use this right here as leverage point. See if I can't just gently pull up on that, because I don't want to damage the hose. I think we got it with that. And I don't think we need to remove this hose, but I think I'm going to, just to make it easier to pull this whole unit out. And for whatever reason, whoever did this last decided to put the clip facing down. So whoever did that, screw you. You just made this damn near impossible. So I guess I'm just gonna work around it. Go ahead and push this out of the way. I got an idea. Time for some zippy ties. How strong is that hose? Not very strong. Go ahead and put 2 of these zip ties together. I might need 3 zip ties. Oh, I got it. Okay. We can hold that hose out of the way, like so. And it gives us plenty of room. Really wish I could find my universal swivel joint. It'll make getting to these a lot easier, but I think with my extension going over the top, I'll be just fine. Go ahead and remove these 3 8mm bolts. Woo. And go ahead and pull this assembly unit out. Give it a couple shakes to break it loose. And now we're going to need to lift it straight up to get it off this hose at the bottom. Ow. Try that again. Ah. Well, you get the point. And there we have our old unit. Make sure before installing your new unit, you check right here, because a lot of the times, just like on mine, the O-ring for the bottom gasket will actually stay connected. And you definitely don't want to double gasket these. I'm going to go ahead and reconnect the lower hose first. Like so. Doesn't need to be bolted down, or I'm sorry, doesn't need to be, the hose clamp doesn't need to be put on it yet. We're going to go ahead and start these 3 bolts. Hopefully we'll be able to start them by hand without too much issue. Oh, outstanding. Second bolt. Just give them a couple turns. Make sure all 3 of these are started by hand before you put any of them down tight. There we go. And go ahead, start putting these bolts on there. Just put them down a couple clicks at first. Then we can go back, put them down nice and tight. Good. Go ahead and remove this connector right over here and plug it back in. Although it appears that the new connector is in there the other way, but that's fine. Reconnect that. Go ahead and put our hose back down. Put that on there before it throws up on me. That's what that was sounding like. Kind of scared me for a second. Grab our hose clamp. Give it a good wiggle. Slide that back down nice and tight. Go ahead and remove our zip ties. Come back in here with the large hose. This goes around, I think. Yep, there it goes. Around the oil cap. Give that some wiggles to put her down. I had to use my bill pair right here. Make sure that tubing is all the way down, and put that hose clamp back on. And last but not least, we got our lower hose. Reach down here. Ow. Reach down here again. Give that some wiggles. A little bit more. Just couldn't quite get a good grip on it. And there we go. Beautiful. Now, as you can see right down here, this is where I left the bolts in. The intake manifold. And they're sizably long, so they shouldn't fall out without any real difficulty, unless you put like a magnet down there, or if there's a lot of dirt buildup inside of the grooves where you put that T30 tool bit, socket, whatever you want to call it. And that way I can just go ahead and put all this back straight down, like so. And for the most part, that should pretty much line up with all the bolt holes. Might be some little bit of wiggling or adjusting to be done with the intake manifold to get them to line up, but I'm not really worried about it. They should go together fairly simply. When putting the intake manifold back down, you're going to want to do a crisscross method from the middle out. So we'll start here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the order you do it in doesn't really matter, as long as you start, and then whichever one you start from, you just start doing crisscrossing out. It doesn't matter which one you start on, as long as it's one of these 4 beginning ones, and obviously you're going to end on one of the exterior ones. As long as you do a crisscross method, you'll get that pressure evenly distributed to the intake manifold, and you shouldn't have any leaks. And with that, we're going to go ahead and put everything else back together in the exact reverse order that we took it apart from, and you should be golden. Top off your coolant, or if you want to do a flush, this is the perfect time to do it. Just go ahead and pull that lower radiator hose, let all this crap drain out of there, and refill it with the proper Ford Gold coolant. And pretty much all there is to replacing your thermostat housing on this 2011 Ford Ranger with the 4-liter V6. If this video helped you out and you'd like to see more videos on Ford freaking Rangers, check that one out next. I made that one just for you. But other than that, if this video helped you out, leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see y'all next time.